He lived in a wine barrel. He owned one wooden cup until he smashed it. He urinated on rich men at dinner parties. And when the most powerful man in the world came to meet him, he asked him to step out of the sunlight. His name was Diogenes of Sinope, and 24 centuries later, he is still the most dangerous philosopher in history. Not because he was violent, because he proved something that kings and billionaires and ordinary people still refuse to accept. Almost everything you are afraid of losing was never worth having in the first place. This is the story of the dog philosopher, the man who founded Cynic philosophy by living it, who humiliated Plato in front of his own academy, who was sold as a slave and refused to stop being free, and who, lying in the dirt outside of Athens, looked up at Alexander the Great and asked him to move. To understand why Diogenes matters, you have to understand what he gave up. He was not born poor. He was not born broken. He was the son of a banker in Sinope, a wealthy Greek port city on the Black Sea. His father, Hesychius, was in charge of the mint. And at some point, Diogenes was involved in defacing the currency. We do not know if it was his idea or his father's. But the coins of Sinope were pulled from circulation. The family was disgraced, and Diogenes was exiled. He would later say that defacing the currency was the greatest gift his life ever gave him, because it forced him to deface something much bigger. The currency of other people's opinions, the currency of social performance, the invisible money everyone spends every day pretending to be someone they are not. He walked from Sinope to Athens with nothing, and in Athens, the smartest city in the ancient world, he watched men who called themselves wise argue about ideas while chasing status, wealth, and reputation. And he decided he would do the opposite. He would make his entire life an argument. Not written, not spoken, lived. He did not call himself a philosopher. He called himself a dog. In Greek, the word for dog is kuon, and the school of thought he founded eventually took that name. Cynics, those who lived like dogs. He meant it as pride, not insult. A dog does not pretend. A dog does not lie to itself about what it wants. A dog does not perform for strangers. A dog is exactly what a dog is, and every other animal, including the human animal, would be less miserable if it remembered how to do the same. His home was a large ceramic jar, not a barrel, as most retellings have it, but something close. A pythos, big enough to curl inside. He carried nothing with him but a cloak, a staff, and a leather bag. He slept in temples and porticos. He ate what he begged for. He did his bodily functions in public, and he claimed he was the only truly free man in all of Greece. There is a scene that sums up his entire philosophy. Diogenes was eating in a temple. This was forbidden. Temples were for offerings and sacrifices, not for meals. A priest caught him and said, "You cannot eat here. This is the house of the gods." Diogenes looked at him and said, "And whose house is the rest of the world?" Think about what he did in that moment. He did not argue about the rules. He exposed the assumption underneath them. If the gods created everything, then everything is sacred. If everything is sacred, then there is no special place that deserves more respect than any other. Every rule you enforce about where to eat, how to dress, who to marry, what to say. Every one of those rules is a line drawn in sand by people who have forgotten that the whole beach belongs to everyone. This was his method. He did not write books. He did not give lectures. He lived public demonstrations. He understood something that modern psychology has only recently caught up to. A belief you merely agree with changes nothing. A belief you see lived in front of you changes everything. The scene he is most famous for, after the Alexander meeting, is the lantern. In broad daylight, in the crowded Athenian agora, Diogenes would walk through the marketplace holding a lit lamp, peering into the faces of passing strangers. When people asked him what he was doing, he said, "I am looking for an honest man." He did this for years. Not as a performance, not as a stunt. As a constant, visible reminder that even in the most civilized city in the known world, honesty was so rare that you needed a lamp in the middle of the day to search for it. Imagine that lamp in your life right now. Hold it up to the people you scroll past on your phone. Hold it up to the person you pretend to be in meetings. Hold it up to the version of yourself you present to your parents, your partner, your boss. How many faces in that lamp are honest? How many, including yours, are performing? Diogenes was not asking a rhetorical question. He was doing experimental philosophy with a flame. And the result of his experiment was that the brightest city in the world was, when you looked at it honestly, mostly dark. Now I want to tell you about the day he destroyed Plato in front of his own students. Plato, the most respected philosopher in Athens, once gave a lecture defining what it means to be human. He said, "A human being is a featherless biped, an animal with 2 legs and no feathers." His students applauded the elegance of the definition. The next day, Diogenes walked into Plato's academy carrying a plucked chicken. He held it up to the crowd and said, "Behold, Plato's man." Everyone laughed. But look at what Diogenes just did in front of the entire intellectual establishment of Greece. He took the most respected definition of humanity from the most respected philosopher and exposed it as an empty word game. A chicken with no feathers is not a person. So what actually makes us human? Not our bodies, not our logic alone. Something else, something that philosophers in their towers would have to actually live to find out. After that day, Plato had to add to his definition. He said, "A human being is a featherless biped with broad, flat nails." He was trying to close a loophole that did not need closing. He was trying to win a word game that Diogenes had already shown was unwinnable. Diogenes called Plato a Socrates gone mad. He meant that Plato had taken Socrates' spirit of questioning and turned it into abstract theater. Socrates lived his philosophy. Plato wrote about his philosophy. The difference between those two is the difference between being alive and being a museum. And the lesson for us is just as sharp as it was for Plato. If your beliefs do not change how you live, they are decorations, not beliefs. They are words arranged in elegant patterns to make you feel wise. Diogenes walks into every generation with another plucked chicken in his hand, asking the same question. Where is the human inside all your beautiful words? Eventually, Diogenes was captured by pirates while traveling. They put him on a slave block to sell him. The auctioneer asked him, "What can you do?" Diogenes answered, "I can govern men." Then, pointing to a wealthy buyer in the crowd, he said, "Sell me to that man. He needs a master." The wealthy buyer, a man named Xeniades, was so impressed that he actually bought him. And once Diogenes was in his household, he did exactly what he promised. He governed. He tutored Xeniades' children. He ran the affairs of the house. He became the most important person in his own master's life. When people tried to buy his freedom, Diogenes refused. He said, "Lions do not become slaves of those who feed them. It is those who feed the lions who become the slaves." Think about what he is saying. You think your boss owns you because they sign the checks. But if you were not afraid of losing that check, they would have no power over you. Your fear is the collar, not their money. Remove the fear, and you are free, even if the checks keep coming. This is why Diogenes was so dangerous. He did not need to escape. He did not need to rebel. He had already located freedom in the only place it actually exists, inside his own reactions. And once freedom lives there, no one can take it from you, because no one can reach it. Diogenes owned one possession that still mattered to him, a wooden cup. One day, walking along a river, he saw a young boy scoop water up with his cupped hands and drink. Diogenes stopped. He looked at his wooden cup. He looked at the boy. Then he smashed the cup against a rock and said, "A child has beaten me at simplicity. He spent the rest of his life with less than a child owns. Every object you own asks something of you. It asks to be cleaned, protected, stored, insured, remembered. 10 objects make 10 small demands. 1,000 objects make 1,000. You did not realize you signed these contracts because you signed them one at a time, over years, each one so small it felt like nothing. But added together, they are the reason you are exhausted by a life that looks good from the outside." Diogenes saw this before there were credit cards or subscriptions or storage units. He saw that owning more was the same as being owned more, and he refused. And here is where his philosophy comes home to you. When you lie in bed at night and count the things you are afraid of losing, how many of them were you actually enjoying? How many were you just maintaining? How many belong on the other side of the rock with that wooden cup? And then, finally, comes the scene everyone knows. But I want to tell it to you again, with the context of everything else you now know about him. Alexander the Great was in Corinth. He was young. He had already conquered most of the known world. Kings, generals, philosophers, oracles. Everyone came to pay tribute. One man did not. Diogenes. So Alexander went to him. He found the philosopher sprawled in the sun in front of his jar, doing nothing. And Alexander, towering over him in full armor, said, "I am Alexander, the great king." Diogenes looked up and said, "And I am Diogenes, the dog." Alexander asked, "Is there anything I can do for you? Any favor? Any gift? Anything in my power?" Diogenes considered the conqueror of the known world, and he said, "Yes. Stand out of my sunlight." Alexander, walking away, told his generals, "If I were not Alexander, I would be Diogenes." Think about that confession. The most powerful man in human history, looking at a homeless philosopher lying in the dirt with nothing to his name, and admitting that this is the only other life he would trade his own for. Diogenes died around 323 BCE, the same year, coincidentally, that Alexander died on his final campaign. The philosophers made note of it. 2 men, the opposite ends of human ambition, exiting the stage at the same time. The stories of how Diogenes died are, fittingly, contradictory. Some say he held his breath on purpose, choosing the moment of his own death. Some say he was bitten by a dog. Some say he was poisoned by an octopus he ate raw on the beach. Before he died, his friends asked him how he wanted to be buried. He told them to throw his body over the city wall for the wild animals to eat. They were horrified. They said, "But the beasts will devour you," Diogenes said. "Then put a stick next to me so I can fight them off." His friend said, "But you will be dead. You will not know." He said, "Then what does it matter what they do to me?" That is his philosophy in a single death scene. You will be dead. You will not know. Nothing that happens to your body, your reputation, your legacy after the moment you are gone will reach you. So stop building your life around protecting those things. Build your life around being free while you still can feel the sun on your face. Diogenes is not asking you to live in a barrel. He's asking something harder. He's asking you to notice how much of your suffering comes from performing a version of yourself for an audience you cannot even see. How much of your energy goes into keeping up a mask that gives you nothing in return. How much of your money, your time, your health has been spent chasing respect from people whose opinion would not matter if you saw them clearly. The dog philosopher called himself a dog because dogs have no shame about what they need and no performance about what they do not. They eat when hungry. They sleep when tired. They bark at what they distrust. They are present with what is in front of them. They are not trying to be something else. And maybe, 2,400 years after he died in the dirt, the question he left us with is still the one we cannot face. If you were not afraid of what other people thought, if you were not performing for strangers, if you were not carrying all the things you were told you needed in order to matter, how much of your current life would you keep? And how much would you smash against a rock, like a wooden cup, and walk away from lighter than you have been in years? Diogenes lived to make you ask that question. Whether you answer it is up to you. But I promise you this: the life that survives the question is the only one worth having.